This is update number 3 in my weekly series of videos on my journey to being C2 in 10 languages, including my native English, as well as German, Dutch, Swedish, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, French, Russian, and Mandarin Chinese. I've been doing a lot of Swedish this week, and that included actually finding an Anki deck online of the top 8,000 most common Swedish words, downloading it, and then going through it and picking out words that I haven't yet seen or that I don't know yet, or that have a secondary meaning that I did not already have included in the word that I had already in my Anki deck, and essentially adding it in. This is extremely time intensive. I try, if I can, to add a full sentence for that word. So I'll go look online at this Babla website, which has a lot of documents related to, I don't know, legislation or EU talks in general. So it's not really daily conversations on the street. It's sort of official stuff. And I try to find the words in context and then copy paste a sentence inside. And this takes quite a bit of time, and I've been doing this bit by bit. And it's amazing to me how many words I don't recognize in Swedish. So in Dutch, my knowledge of German is quite good in that I can read almost anything. And I have a very strong, at very least, passive vocabulary in the language. When I learned Dutch more recently, I found it very easy to tell which words were just variations of a German word that I knew. So it was quite easy for me to read a text without having to look up many of the words. Obviously, finding those or using those words organically would be much more difficult. But when I do this with Swedish, I find it's incredibly difficult, and I almost always have to look up the definition of the word and then I go, oh, right, that's what that is. Or, yes, of course, it's only a few letters different, and it actually kind of sounds similar to the same thing in German, or maybe even the same thing in English. And I don't know what it is about the language, but I find Swedish a fair amount more difficult than I find Dutch. In any case, I've been doing that, and actually this is to sort of change subjects a bit. I always try to find a series of channels that I can listen to. And in Swedish, it is somewhat hard to find good channels that contain subtitles, because there aren't many non-Swedish people who need subtitles or who are watching Swedish YouTube videos. For the most part, Swedish people watch Swedish YouTube, and they don't often have subtitles as far as I've seen. And I found a couple. One is a sort of a late night talk show with a guy. It's not particularly funny, but he is at least fairly biting in his remarks. And the other thing is this fellow, it's a channel by a self-proclaimed libertarian entrepreneur and leader. What was his name? Henrik Jönsson, and he makes a lot of videos, and he makes about one a week. It's 30 minutes long, and it's half an hour of him talking about some subject. And he talks about subjects that I do find quite interesting: social issues, nuclear energy, the pandemic, identity politics. And as you might guess from when I described him as a libertarian entrepreneur, he's there in his suit with his pocket square, and behind him there's a fake background with like big bookshelves with lots of very regal looking books. So he looks kind of slick, kind of like a snake in a way, or basically a villain in a movie. And I look at him and I'm watching him, and I feel myself thinking, am I falling victim to right-wing misinformation? He certainly is opinionated, and I'm not saying he's lying about anything, but he has views. He's not a big fan of identity politics, and he's certainly seems to be a big fan of the left parties in Sweden. But he's one of the few people I've found who speaks about interesting topics without subtitles. And with subtitles, I should say. If there aren't subtitles, I can kind of understand it, but I very quickly get lost and I don't enjoy it as much. With subtitles, I can watch and read somewhat, and I can enjoy, and I can actually be thinking about what they're saying instead of just sitting there like a zombie trying to catch every single word they're saying. So it was very interesting, because I don't know much about Sweden, not nearly as much as I should, and part of learning Swedish is to learn more about Sweden. And in the end, you learn, or you take on the opinions in general of the people that you're exposed to. And this fellow is exposing me to a lot of opinions that are not often the kinds of things that I would watch on YouTube in English or in French or in German. So it's quite interesting, and I'm not sure, maybe I'll have a wildly different libertarian mindset by the end of the month. I expect not, but it's certainly interesting how he is one of the few people making high quality, as in, the quality of the video is so much better than the quality of this video, for example. The quality of his microphone's far better, and he's much more prepared, and it's got little animations and all that. And in the end, most of what I'm going to be watching in the next couple of weeks in Swedish will be this man and his opinions and his voice. So we'll see. We'll see if I get brainwashed. In any case, I noticed again a couple of things in German that I saw I've been watching this Netflix series, which is basically on Oktoberfest 120 years ago. And it's a bit silly. It's not that great, but it's something you can watch, and it's available on Canada's Netflix. And I was, at the same time as I'm impressed with myself with how much of the sort of Bavarian pronunciation and colloquial expressions I can catch without needing to use subtitles, at the same time, there are still so many things I've yet to learn. Obviously, a period piece set 120 years ago in a region of Germany that is known for having a certain way of speaking will be a lot more difficult than watching a news anchor today. But yet it really does reinforce just how much you're never going to stop learning. Or at least I hope to one day. The whole point of this series is that one day there is a conclusion, maybe at video 417, but we'll see. The other thing I can say is that my Chinese has started to regress, as some of the repetitions of words that I'm seeing are quite difficult for me to remember. And I'm only planning to really get into Chinese properly at the midpoint of the year, so at the start of July. And I hope that between now and then, I can maintain enough of a memory of all the characters and words that I've learned that when it comes time for midsummer to be here and for me to start reading and start speaking in Chinese, that I am able to do so without having to revert back and take a couple of steps back first. That's about it. Besides that, nothing really else to report until next week.